I want to know, like, you kind of talked about some of the things, anything you haven't covered about how the UGC platforms really create that and what challenges still exist there despite this higher accessibility, this low cost of creativity.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's lots of challenges. I mean, in some ways, particularly for a developer like me, who's used to being having a lot of control over a technology stack, having a clean sheet approach to game development where anything is possible, and like delivering a game into kind of an open gaming community from the perspective of, hey, my total addressable market is every gamer out there, and I can go and find and carve out an audience that likes this kind of thing. That's all different here in these platforms because everybody on this platform plays Fortnite today. I think their hope is tomorrow and the day after, people come to this platform for whatever games are popular at the time and new games coming all the time. But primarily the people who are there, the 200-300 million folks every month, they're there to play Fortnite. So that's who you're making games for, are people who play Fortnite. So you kind of have to keep that in mind, that your addressable market, your customer, your player, that's who it is, So you don't have to make that. You don't have to make Fortnite for them. But it's like you have a vegetarian restaurant, so you really ought to consider the ingredients that you stock your kitchen with when you're going to go cook dinner for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. It's also it's a younger crowd than say the Riot, the Valve, or the Blizzard crowd. So that's another thing that's a little bit challenging, and it's not challenging.
Is that just from the perspective of sort of empathizing and understanding? Is that when you say like it's a younger crowd, or is that something else? I
think it's something else. It's like we were saying. Like the kids that are growing up today, they don't go to the mall. They're on TikTok. They're in Fortnite. They're a very digital generation. They have more vocabulary to how they socialize with each other than, say, my generation had, and that's cultural. So the kinds of visual references and vocabulary and even gameplay that translates into gameplay and how games are built. One thing that is a really interesting. I don't know if you'd call it a best practice or a norm, but if you build a game from scratch that you're going to ship on Steam, you probably have a lot of user interface to it, that onboards players, tells players how to play. You'd get a screen that gives you instructions or an arrow in the scene or whatever it is. It's like there's a lot of ways that we use user interface and user experience to tell a story and make a game work. And that is true in UEFN, but because of that, where the tools are and the culture and the language and how a lot of games that originally were made on this platform were made in the 1.0 version of Creative, which had no programming language, etc., you end up with a lot of what I would call diegetic user interface, which is just like, well, let's just take some shit from the library and throw it into the scene and put an arrow on it, or you don't walk up to something and you press get a screen and press a button. You actually walk onto a physical button that's on the floor and it activates something. And that's a small, subtle thing, but it's a design aesthetic that's just different, Mm-hmm. And I think it's even cultural. So that's what I'm talking about, stuff like that. And then at the same time, you're in an environment that feels more like YouTube than it does like Steam. There's a lot of choice. There's a lot of thumbnails. You're on a platform that has a first party developer, i.e. Epic. They just released their first person camera this week. And, we have a game that we've been building that uses a first person camera, and it's kind of built around sort of the asymmetric tactical gameplay of something like a Counter-Strike or Valorant. And wouldn't you know it, Epic shipped their own version of that the same day. So that's different too, right? So, and again, that's not a complaint. Probably going to end up being a good thing for everybody, but it's just different, and those are the kinds of things that are, when you're asking, like, how is it different in this environment? it's that, you've got like Fortnite is really like who your players are. Epic is a very much a presence in your life, from the tools that you're using to the first party games that are on the platform to the how discovery works, etc., and everything. And the players are, they've grown up there and they have their own language and their own culture and their own aesthetic. That said, UEFN is not the only platform in which we make games. But I think any platform that has grown up that way, started as like a Minecraft as a platform, or even Roblox, has similar aspects to it where they have their own vibe.
Yeah. It's funny. I go back to boy, it's a long time ago now, but when Battle.net had like not in the StarCraft 2, but when old Battle.net had the old StarCraft Brood War and the StarCraft editor was out, and you could go and you could find custom games, and sort of, for me, this was the origins of tower defense and all these different things, and all this different space. But you're right, there was a culture and a vibe and a feel to that was unique to, hey, you're on Battle.net custom game lists. This is where you're living right now. And that was different from almost anything else. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, because, when we realize that there's some really interesting things about platforms like this that could be the basis of a business venture, in our pitch deck, we reference things like Dota, like PUBG, like games that basically got their start within other games. It's been part of gaming since Doomwads, right? So it is nothing new from that perspective. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. The theory I have is that some of the most successful games that people still play today were their origin was mods. So you just mentioned PUBG. Counter-Strike also fits in that, like League of Legends, Dota 2 obviously come from there. Some of the biggest, most well-known games that everybody just thinks of as games now got their start in mods. And I think this ties into, what UGC is kind of enabling your current team to do compared to when you were in the AAA space. Because if you're working on a mod, often those people aren't funded. They're usually very small teams or just one person. And they are constantly interacting with players trying or not trying their game. And like, if everybody stops playing it, you lose. And so you're just, in some sense, it's this very pure model of game development. And obviously there's constraints of whatever the tools were, but the tools have just gotten better and